Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to A.O.S. Abroad. And today we are going to be taking the um, presentation for the webinar Seek Asylum in Canada and Become a Refugee with PR status, which is Permanent Residence Status. So today we are going to have someone actually take us through that. Rashidat Olufunke Yusuf is going to be our guest speaker today. If you can actually hear us, please let us know. If you can see the slides that we have, let us know. We are going to be having some people join us very shortly. So as soon as you're joining, let us know. As you are joining, where you are joining from, let's know what you're seeing in your screen, and let's actually start up together and have fun in the process. So thanks for everyone. We have quite a lot of people actually on the session right now. If you can hear us audibly, please put um, let us know. Let us know if you can hear us. If you can hear the audio, and let us know where you are actually joining from. I, for instance, am Aziz Shudiru, and I'm joining from Brampton, Ontario, Canada. I will drop that on the comment section. So you also you can actually let us know where you're joining from. I am Aziz from Brampton, Ontario, Canada, and who we're having with us today is Rashidat Olufunke Yusuf. You can actually let us know where you're joining from through the chat section. So we're just going to wait for about 1 to 2 minutes before we actually get started today. Rashidat Yusuf from Ontario, good. Thank you for joining us as our guest speaker. And if you are seeing the screen, let us know that you are seeing the screen. Let us be well informed that you are with us so that we know as we get started right now on the discussion today, which is seek asylum in Canada and become a refugee with PR status, which is permanent residence status. Permanent residence status. So, without wasting much of our time, we are going to get started quickly. And I'm going to be handing over to Rashidat Olufunke Yusuf. As you are joining us, kindly drop a comment, drop a like. We're actually starting on YouTube, so we would have more and more people actually joining as we continue. Let us know if you are actually listening, hearing us audibly well. Let us be informed that we have that we have that communication with people outside. Would really, really appreciate that. And with that being said, we are going to get started right now with the presentation. With the presentation. All right, Rashida Yusuf, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Aziz, for this opportunity. Please, can you all hear me very well? Am I audible? Can you all hear me very well before we start? Okay, so this is what we're going to be taking today, like the agenda. We'll be talking about, as we all know, today's webinar is on seek asylum in Canada and become a refugee with PR status, right? And so this is the agenda for today. We're going to start with the introduction, then we are going to be defining and differentiating between asylum and refugee status. We're going to be recognizing the human rights to seek asylum, the reasons to seek asylum in Canada, the eligibility criteria for seeking asylum in Canada, asylum application process, programs and services in place to support vulnerable asylum seekers and refugees. Then we're going to be talking about paths to permanent residence, right? Now, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching me right now. Thank you for joining us today for this important webinar on seek asylum in Canada and become a refugee with PR status. My name is Rashida Solifunke Yusuf, and I am honored to be the guest speaker of today as we will be exploring a topic that touches on human rights, compassion, and the pursuit of a new beginning. Now, first, let's understand what asylum is. Before we delve into the process of seeking asylum and obtaining permanent residency in Canada, let's establish a foundational understanding of what asylum and refugee status mean. Now, the term refugees and asylum seekers may seem similar, but they are used in different ways. They are used differently. Now, let's take a look at their meaning. Seeking asylum is a fundamental human right, allowing individuals to escape persecution and find safety in another country. That's asylum. That's asylum, while refugees are individuals who have been forced to flee their home countries due to well founded fears of persecution based on factors such as race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group, right? Canada has long been recognized as a haven for those seeking refugee and a fresh start, right? Its commitment to humanitarian values, human rights, and multiculturalism makes it an attractive destination for individuals in search of safety and opportunities for a better life. Now, differentiating between asylum seekers and refugees. Asylum seekers and refugees are distinct categories of people who have sought protection due to persecution, violence, or threats to their life in their home country, right? The primary difference lies in their legal status and the stage of the protection process they are in. Now, let's first take a look at asylum seekers. Asylum seekers is an individual who has left their home country and has applied for asylum in another country but has not yet been granted refugee status. Okay, now the status of an asylum seeker. Asylum seekers are in the process of having their claims evaluated by the host country's immigration authorities to determine whether they meet the criteria for refugee status, right? Now, asylum seekers may have limited rights depending on the country and their ability to work, access education, or receive certain benefits may vary during the application process. Now, the legal consideration. There are generally covered by the principle of non-refoulement, which prevents their return to a country where they may face persecution. However, until their claim are assessed, they do not have the legal status of a refugee. Now, let's take a look at refugees. Refugees are people who have been granted refugee status based on a well founded fear of persecution due to reasons such as religion, race, political opinion, nationality, or membership in a particular social group. The status of a refugee. Refugees have successfully gone through the asylum process and have been formally recognized as meeting the criteria for protection. Once granted refugee status, individuals are entitled to certain rights and protection, including the right to work, access to education, and receive social benefits on par with the host country's citizen. Now, the legal considerations. Refugees are also protected by the principle of non-refoulement, ensuring they are not sent back to a country where their life or where their life or freedom would be at risk. Now, in summary of what we've been talking about, the key difference is that asylum seekers are individuals who have applied for asylum but have not yet been granted refugee status, right? While refugees are individuals who have successfully completed the asylum process and have been formally recognized as meeting the criteria for refugee protection. Both groups share the commonality of seeking safety in a new country due to well founded fears of persecution. Now, in recent years, some asylum seekers have attempted to enter Canada between the designated ports of entry in an effort to enter the country irregularly. This is not recommended for a variety of reasons. And the first reason is that this behavior is a direct contravention of Canada's established immigration and refugee process. Entering outside a designated port of entry can lead to later obstacles, including but not limited to detention. Right now, crossing in an area that is not designated port of entry could put you in danger, especially during the cold winter months. For now, we are close to winter. We are even in winter, even if we don't have snow yet. We are in winter. So Many people have died attempting to cross the um, border in the winter, during the winter. Okay, now I want you to know that a refugee or asylum seeker is different from an immigrant. Okay, an immigrant is a person who chooses to settle permanently in another country. Remember, refugees are forced to flee. Like me now, I am an immigrant because I choose to settle here in Canada permanently without being forced to leave my country or without any fear of persecution. All right. Now, let's move on to recognizing the human right to seek asylum. In Canada, here, the human right to seek asylum is firmly established and protected by both domestic and international laws. The Canadian government recognizes the importance of providing a safe haven for individuals who are fleeing persecution and are in need of international protection. Now, here are the key aspects of human rights to seek asylum in Canada. The first thing is domestic legal framework. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, a constitutional document, include fundamental rights and freedom for everyone in Canada, regardless of their immigration status. The second one is Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, the IRPA. Canada's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act outlines the legal framework for immigration and refugee protection. It affirms Canada's commitment to international conventions and protocols relating to refugees. Another thing is refugee status determination process. The Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada plays a central role in the determination of refugee claims. That is, they are responsible for making decisions on refugee claims, adjudication of immigration matters, and safeguarding the rights of individuals within the Canadian immigration system. Mhm. Asylum seekers in Canada go through a fair and impartial process where their claims are assessed based on well-founded fear of persecution. Now, non-refoulement principle, as we have talked earlier, we have talked about earlier. Canada adheres to the principle of non-refoulement, which means that individuals who have been recognized as refugee or are seeking asylum cannot be returned to a country where they face a risk to their life or freedom. Protection of asylum seekers. Asylum seekers in Canada are entitled to certain rights and protection, including access to health care and the ability to work while their refugee claims are being processed. Access to asylum process. Individuals on Canadian soil have the right to make claim for asylum. This includes those who arrive at official border crossing at designated port of entry or make an inland claim, right? The right to seek asylum is not dependent on how a person arrives in Canada. Now, appeal mechanisms. The IRPA provides avenues for appeal in case of a negative decision on a refugee claim. Asylum seekers have the right to challenge the decision through various legal process. Now, here are some reasons to seek asylum in Canada. Seeking asylum is not a shortcut to get around normal immigration rules and procedures, right? There must be legitimate reasons why asylum is necessary, or else it will not be granted. Okay, asylum claimants face a rigorous process to determine whether or not they have a legitimate claim according to Canadian and international laws. You'll be removed from Canada if you don't have a legitimate claim or are not eligible to make a claim in Canada. Now, you can apply for asylum if you fear persecution for at least one of the following reasons: race and nationality. Now, you fear persecution because you are part of an ethnic or language minority group. You can seek asylum if you fear a persecution because you are a part of ethnic or language minority group. You can seek religion. Religion is part of the reasons. For example, you fear persecution because you are part of a religious minority or because you have converted to another religion, right? Another thing is member of a particular social group. For example, you have been subject to violence because your sexual orientation or gender, or you fear persecution because of your family ties. Please, can everybody hear me very well? Another thing is political opinion. For example, you are a journalist or blogger, a human rights activist, or you are perceived as a government opponents. Now, the eligibility criteria for seeking asylum in Canada. To be eligible for seeking asylum in Canada, individuals must meet certain criteria outlined in the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act and international conventions. Sorry. The eligibility criteria for seeking asylum in Canada include well-founded fear of persecution. That is the main thing, and I've been talking about it. I've been mentioning it since I began this webinar. To qualify for asylum in Canada, an individual must demonstrate a well-founded fear of persecution in their home country based on factors such as religion, race, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. Another thing, outside the country of nationality. To be eligible, individuals must be outside their country of nationality. This means they are seeking asylum in Canada from a location other than their home country, other than their country. Now, unable and unwilling to avail themselves of protection, asylum seekers should show that they are unable to or unwilling to avail themselves of the protection of their home country due to the fear of persecution. Claim at first opportunity. Asylum seekers are generally expected to make their refugee claim at the first available opportunity upon arriving in Canada. This is to ensure that claims are made promptly after fleeing persecution from your home country. All right. Now, no security or criminal threat. Individuals with a criminal record or those deemed to pose a security risk may face challenges in their asylum claims. Serious criminality or security concerns can affect your eligibility for seeking asylum. Another thing is refugee status determination process. Asylum seeker must go through the refugee status determination process conducted by the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. The process involves presenting evidence and arguments to support the claim of persecution. Now, protection against return. As I've said earlier and I'm saying again, Canada adheres to the principle of non-refoulement, which means that individual cannot be returned to a country where they would face a risk to their freedom or life. Exclusion grounds. Certain individuals may be excluded from refugee protection if they are found to be inadmissible based on security concerns, serious criminality, or having committed acts outside Canada that are contrary to the principles of international law. Now, note this, it's important to note that eligibility criteria may be subject to changes, and individuals seeking asylum in Canada should consult the latest information from Canadian immigration authorities. If you are working or you would like to work with us, then you don't have a problem with that, as we partnered with a Canadian immigration lawyer. Right. Additionally, the determination of eligibility is a complex legal process, and individuals often benefit from seeking legal advice and representation during the asylum application and hearing process. Now, let's move on to asylum application process. The Canadian asylum application process involves several steps, from arriving in the country to having your refugee claim assessed by the Immigration Refugee Board of Canada. Now, here is a step-by-step guide to the Canadian asylum application process. The first one is arrival in Canada. Asylum seekers typically arrive in Canada either at official border crossings, designated ports of entry, or make an inland claim if they are already in Canada. The next is informing authorities. Upon arrival, inform Canadian authorities that you wish to seek asylum, right? This can be done at the port of entry or by approaching a Canada Border Service Agency office. If you are already within Canada, you can apply online to make a refugee claim while you wait for your application to be processed. You may be eligible for your work or study permit. You may submit a work permit application along with a refugee claim, but a study permit requires a separate application. Every study permit application requires an acceptance letter from a designated learning institution, right? Now, initial screening. You will undergo an initial screening interview with CBSA officers. During this interview, provide information about why you are seeking asylum and any relevant details about your situation. Then, referral to the IRB. the Immigration Refugee Board. If the CBSA determines that your claim is eligible, you will be referred to the Immigration and Refugee Board for a refugee hearing. Now, your refugee hearing preparation. You have to prepare for your refugee hearing by gathering all your supporting documentation and evidence that demonstrates your well founded fear of persecution in your home country. This may include witness statements, country condition reports, or other relevant documents, right? Now, refugee hearing with the RPD, Refugee Protection Division. Attend a hearing with the Refugee Protection Division of the IRB. During the hearing, present your case, share your personal story, and provide evidence to support your claim. Moving on, decision by the RPD. The RPD will assess your case and make a decision on whether you meet the criteria for refugee protection. This decision is typically communicated to you in writing. If granted refugee status, if your claim is accepted, you'll be granted refugee status in Canada. This status comes with certain rights, including the access to healthcare, um, right to work, and the ability to apply for permanent residency in the future. Okay, and if your claim is refused, you may have the option to appeal the decision through the refugee appeal division within a specified time frame. Now, if the appeal is unsuccessful, there may be a risk of removal from Canada. However, individuals are generally protected by the principle of non-refoulement. Okay. Now, moving on. I've said this before and I'm saying it again. It is important to note that the asylum application process can be complex, and individuals are encouraged to seek legal advice and representation to navigate the process effectively. Additionally, the steps and procedure to make the subjects may be subject to changes, and it is advisable to consult the latest information from Canadian immigration authorities or legal professional. If you are working or would like to work with us, then you don't have a problem with that, as we've partnered with a Canadian immigration lawyer. So you have to think and choose wisely. All right, now programs and services to support vulnerable asylum seekers and refugees. Canada has implemented various programs and services to support vulnerable asylum seekers, recognizing their unique needs and challenges. These initiatives are designed to ensure the well being, safety, and successful integration of individuals who may be facing additional hardship due to their vulnerabilities. Now, here are some of the programs and services in place. We have the legal aid services. Asylum seekers, particularly those who are vulnerable, may have access to legal aid services to ensure they receive proper representation during the refugee determination process, and the services will continue to be available to refugees post resettlement. This includes assistance with immigration matters, family reunification, and other legal issues that may arise. Moving on, healthcare access. Vulnerable asylum seekers and refugees have access to healthcare services to address both physical and mental health needs. This include medical assessments, treatments, and mental health support. Counseling and trauma support. Programs offer counseling and trauma support for refugees and asylum seekers who have experienced persecution, violence, or trauma in their home country. Mental health services aim to assist individuals in coping with the psychological effects of their experience. Now, community and social support. Community organizations and social support networks provide assistance to asylum seekers or refugees. This service may include language support, cultural orientation, and community integration programs, shelter and housing assistance. Asylum seekers in vulnerable situations may receive assistance in finding temporary shelter or housing, right? Various organizations collaborate to ensure that individuals and families have a safe place to stay during the asylum process. And assistance is provided to refugees in finding suitable and affordable housing here in Canada. Education and skills training. Programs are in place to facilitate education and skills training for asylum seekers and refugees who wish to continue their education or have their foreign credentials recognized in Canada. This includes language courses, job readiness programs, and initiatives to enhance employability. Child and family support services. Asylum seeking or refugee families are unaccompanied minors receive specific support services tailored to their unique needs. Child welfare services, education support, and family reunification programs contribute to their well being. Now, legal advocacy and human rights organization. Legal advocacy groups and human rights organizations play a crucial role in supporting asylum seekers and refugees. They provide legal advice, advocacy, and assistance throughout the refugee determination process, right? Crisis intervention and emergency assistance. In situations of immediate need, vulnerable asylum seekers and refugees may access crisis intervention and emergency assistance programs. These services address urgent needs such as food, clothing, and temporary shelter. Now, community sponsorship programs. Canada's private sponsorship program allows community groups to sponsor and support vulnerable refugees, providing financial, emotional, and settlement assistance. Employment assistance. Employment services and programs are available to assist refugees in finding suitable employment. These include job search support, resume writing workshop, and guidance on navigating the Canadian job market. Note, these programs and services reflect Canada's commitment to humanitarian values and the protection of vulnerable population. They are implemented through collaboration between government agencies, non-profit organizations, community groups, and legal aid providers to create a comprehensive support network for asylum seekers and refugees in the country. Now, this is the most interesting part. Path to permanent residency. Recognition as a refugee. The journey begins with you being recognized as a refugee through the refugee determination process overseen by the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. To refugee protection status. If the Refugee Protection Division of the IRB grants refugee protection, the individual is given protected person status in Canada. This status provides the right to remain in the country and is typically granted for a specific period. Now, application to permanent residency. Protected person in Canada can apply for permanent residency through one of the following programs. One, government assisted refugees. Individuals who came to Canada through the Refugee and Humanitarian Resettlement Program. Secondly, private sponsored refugee. Individuals sponsored by private groups such as community organizations, religious institutions, or individuals. Blended visa office referred program. A combination of government and private sponsorship. Eligibility requirements for PR. To be eligible for permanent residency, individuals must meet specific criteria related to admissibility, health, security, and other factors. They must also meet the requirements of the specific refugee resettlement program through which they are applying. Then, permanent residency application process. The permanent residency application involves submitting various forms, supporting documents, and fees. The application is typically processed by Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada (IRCC). Now, background checks and security screening. Applicants undergo thorough background checks and security screenings to ensure they meet admissibility requirements for permanent residency. Medical examination. A medical examination is usually required as part of the permanent residency application process to assess the applicant's health and ensure they do not pose a public health risk. Then interview, that is if required. Some applicants may be required to attend an interview as part of the application process. This interview may be conducted by a visa officer to assess the applicant's eligibility. Then, issuance of permanent residency. If the permanent residency application is approved, the individual is issued a permanent residence visa. This visa allows them to live, work, and study anywhere in Canada. Then resettlement and integration. Upon receiving permanent residency, individuals are encouraged to actively participate in settlement and integration programs. These programs provide support in areas such as language training, employment assistance, and community engagement, path to Canadian citizenship. After residing in Canada as a permanent resident for about 1,095 days or 3 years, individual may be eligible to apply for Canadian citizenship, provided they meet the requirements outlined in the Citizenship Act. Now, it is important to know that specific details may vary depending on the resettlement programs and individual circumstances. The process is designed to provide a pathway for refugees to establish themselves in Canada, contribute to society, and eventually pursue Canadian citizenship if they choose to do so. If you would like us to help you in this situation, then feel free to reach out to us as soon as possible. Would you like to work with us? Do you want to work with us? Now, this is an opportunity for you to book a 5 minute free clarity call. This is a free introductory consultation session, and here is the link here. I'll paste it somewhere on the chat box where you can ask only 5 important questions about your travel goals and get them answered without a fee. All you need to do is to drop a genuine review at the end of the discussion. That is all you need. You don't have to pay for this 5 minutes 5 minutes consultation. That is why we call it 5 minutes free clarity call. So all you need to do is just to drop a genuine review after the end of the discussion with the consultant. And that's it. Yes, thank you very much. We'll be expecting your call. All right, thank you, Mr. Aziz. You
All
can take
right,
over.
thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. And there's about 32 minutes right now. She has really given you a brief intro to what it all takes to actually become a refugee or to seek asylum in Canada. You understand? And if you want to learn more, we are just like educators, we are travel educators trying to educate you on what to do. As she said throughout the presentation, we have a Canadian immigration lawyer that we have partnered with who can actually give you much more details and help you if you actually want to seek asylum or become a refugee and you understand later on become a permanent resident of Canada through this pathway. So if you have any questions again you would like to ask, book this 5 minutes free consultation. I've actually shared the link on the comment section and we do hope to actually get your you understand response afterwards. So Rashida, do you have any other thing you'd like to share?
No, not really.
Nothing. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, and do have a lovely day ahead. Bye for now.
Bye.